There are many videos out there, including some made by myself, to introduce and refresh people to the various gameplay loops, credit grinds, reputation methods, and engineering material strategies. Because Elite is very simulator authenticity focused and tries to make the player feel like being a part of the world instead of the world surrounding the player, it is outright hostile to new ones. This game is pretty guide heavy and is downright reliant in certain ways on third-party websites like Inara. Because of this, things can fall between the cracks when learning and even playing the game for an extended period of time. And due to the nature of YouTube video guides largely focusing on making money and raw ship progression, I think there has been a key feature of Elite missed out on by a non-insignificant amount of people: the BGS. In fact, I'd wager that most people either don't know about it at all or have a core misunderstanding as to its functionality and how important it is to the game as a whole. Honestly, the BGS and learning how it works has turned Elite from a game I liked a lot to a game I love, actually becoming my favorite game, period. And in learning it, I discovered just how woven player interactions are into the game's world, and how frankly insane it is that I don't see more YouTube videos covering its workings, probably due to it being vast and complicated. In this video, I want to take this system, this feature, and break it down to you in a way that is accessible to new and experienced players that are unaware of it, and hopefully put you in a position to understand this game on a level many players out there, even experienced ones, do not. Let's begin. So, you know that massive list of randomly generated factions you see on the mission board? All of these factions are essentially governments located within the star system. So if you were to enter the system map and click on this little government building icon, you'll see a comprehensive list of them, as well as the different physical locations they own, like starports, settlements, installations. Most things that exist in the game are owned by somebody. You probably also noticed that there is a bunch of pretty complicated looking stuff above that, and don't worry, this really isn't actually all that complicated. This influence trend graph right here can be interpreted as a territory control graph. So in this example, I'm sitting in a starport called Fraunhofer Ring in the Erasinus star system, with 1 billion people living in it. I probably just butchered both of those names, but this system is registered in the gal map as Imperial, currently undergoing a boom state. Fraunhofer Ring is owned by a faction called Interstellar Order. Back in that Factions tab in the system map, the Interstellar Order is aligned with the Empire of Akinar, or the Empire, and while a system can have up to 7 factions in them, 3 of them here are Imperial. The biggest faction within the system, which holds over 50% influence in this case, is the one registered in the gal map. When you click on any populated star system in Elite, you aren't getting the whole story in that little info panel. The boom state is there because the biggest faction is currently going through a boom state, but in that Factions tab, the smallest one is actually having an economic bust right now, and that stat is not illustrated anywhere on the gal map. You can see every faction in the game as its own little entity that either aligns themselves with a superpower or keeps to itself as an independent. They each have their own little behavioral differences. They ebb and flow. They change over time. So let's say you land at a starport, decide to buy or sell a commodity, or do really any economic activity. Every successful trade is recognized by the BGS and is added to a virtual bucket. After a certain amount of good trades, that bucket fills and a good economic state will likely be incurred. That's what the boom state means. Do even more good economic activities for them, and it can turn into an investment state, which is an even higher boom state. This also raises their influence, which is what that graph refers to. Pretty much everything you do in the game contributes to this system in some way. For example, if you do a lot of Haz-Res farming, as we all have done at some point, the pirate NPCs you kill are not just totally random, meaningless things to shoot at. You are actively hurting the influence of whatever criminal faction they belong to when you kill them. This applies to every NPC in the game. On the flip side, if you were to kill a lot of police forces in the system or random NPCs, you would be heavily damaging the influence of whoever they belong to. That tiny faction I showed you prior, that basically is having its economy collapse right now, is an anarchy faction, likely some criminal group, which are constantly being killed, flattening their influence and ruining their economy. A lot of people have a hard time knowing how to do anything with the BGS or, like, how to interact with it. But, as I just said, pretty much everything you do is affecting it. Hack a data port illegally, you hurt whoever that data belongs to. Complete a mission, that's more influence for whoever you took it from. Fail a mission, that hurts their influence. Raid a settlement illegally, you are literally shrinking that government. And the consequences of that can come with conflicts. If a faction is over, I think, around 5% influence in any given star system, if at any time their influence meets with another faction, a conflict state happens between them. So, for example, back in Erasinus, or however, let's say the Independent Labor faction, which is a democracy, has a growth period and meets the Interstellar Order, a dictatorship. They will fight a war over physical territory. If you're ever fighting in a conflict zone, this is the sim powering that. Each side of the war tries to take territory from each other. What territory is on the line can be seen from the status tab on the right side panel. This can be a station, settlement, anything really. Now, let's say two democracies meet in influence. They won't fight in a war, rather they will run an election, which has its own gameplay associated with it. Basically, different government types, war, same government types, no war. Unless you're anarchy, in that case you just fight everybody. A lot of the states in the Gal map are a result of some kind of sim movement, and while all this may be a bit complicated, it's actually very contextual. A lot of this boils down to just do a good thing for a faction, good things happen to them. Do something bad, bad things eventually happen to them. This is what ties into the reputation system, completing missions even if you don't prioritize influence as a reward, selling rare commodities, rescuing civilians, delivering votes, whatever it may be. Good things make them grow, which makes them like you. Failing missions, committing crimes, stealing, killing, bad things against them, that hurts them, making them smaller, putting their physical territory in danger, making them dislike you. Fun fact, that's what this little influence reward choice means. People actually measure the amount of pluses and little pips they earn, bounties, trades, credits, all that kind of stuff, and report them in spreadsheets, which, if you dive deep enough, you might run into. Every single gameplay loop in the game contributes to this system in some way. Selling exploration data helps whoever you sold it to. Doing a data heist mission helps whoever you did it for and hurts whoever you do it to. If you farm engineering materials out of destroying innocent beluga liners, the government those people belong to suffers and can suffer greatly. This is why sometimes tutorials for Elite, especially in certain locations, sometimes don't line up with what you see in game. If a lot of people do something in a certain area, that has consequences. Now, if a faction has a substantial amount of control in a star system, around 75%, it can expand into a new system and start the influence progression all over again. So if a federal faction were to enter this star system and take it, it wouldn't be registered as an Imperial star system on the Gal map anymore. They would actually have to literally kick the Interstellar Order out of the system, which, I guess as a quick aside, native factions are ones that were formed in the system and can't be kicked out, but can be made insignificant. And I can't figure out if there's a way to see the distinction in game, so this is where things like Inara.cz come in, because if we take a look at this system there, we can see that 6 of the 7 are native, so only one new government can exist here. So you'd literally have to remove the Interstellar Order to have a presence for yourself here. You can also see with Inara which one of these factions are player factions. This used to be a system where if your player group was big enough, you could submit a form to Frontier themselves and literally have your player group illustrated in-game. But this was retired a while ago and is likely about to see some kind of rework. Now, while this system is cool, what is the point of participating in it? What is the reward? And well, that's the thing. If you were to, say, start working for this little anarchy faction and make them overthrow this star system, cross everyone's influence, win all of the territory, you are rewarded with the reputation benefits and the credits you earned along the way, which usually isn't anywhere near the meta. I hope this sees some change. Don't get me wrong, you will earn money and you will progress, and if you're a new player, you will gain a lot of experience, but I hope the system overall gets a lot more rewarding financially, and that may happen soon. I'll keep you updated. You can kinda see dedicated BGS work as the game within a game. Most people just go for the earn money, buy ship, upgrade ship experience, which is totally fine and obviously in intention by the devs, but if you ever get tired with the money grind, there is a whole other aspect of the game that you can sink your teeth into and put those fancy ships you've built into something else, then earning more money to build new fancy ships. The reward is kind of being a part of something more and whatever spoils you get along the way, at least in my experience. Now, one of the biggest misconceptions I hear about this system is that it's not something solo players or really small player groups can even do, and that is completely false. You as a single person can overthrow a star system in this game, but you have to put scale into perspective. Which system is going to be harder to influence, a system with 2 million people or 2 billion? You can kind of see the population as a difficulty measurement. As a single person, it's going to be very, very hard, if not impossible, to overthrow a 10 billion population star system. But a 5 million? You can do basically whatever you want with. And of course, if you get your buddies together, the more of you there are, the more you can keep up with. The only truth to that misconception is that, let's say you take a faction in a small system and do such a good job, you expand out. In that case, you could theoretically scale your faction up so high it's too much for one person to handle, and in that way there are limitations. If you don't want to go it alone, there are various public BGS operations out there, but the one that pops into my head first is the Burrian Protectorate, a BGS faction that exists in-game that's related to the YouTube channel The Burr Pit, run by Commander Burr and Commander Rini. Their faction operations are public in the Burr Pit's Discord, with standing orders and everything, so if you want to be part of something greater, there are resources. Or you can find yourself a quiet, small system and experiment with it yourself, or do whatever you want really. This system is extremely cool, albeit a bit imbalanced. I think could use some more incentive from the devs, but regardless, knowing how it works demystifies this game a lot and means you can take advantage of stuff a lot more intuitively. For example, if I'm doing power play and want to do some bounty hunting for my superpower, economic boom states see a spike in pirate activity, and installations can come under attack and experience heists. You can either choose to be a defender or attacker in this heist, which has different implications if you are doing something like undermining or reinforcing. I would also recommend looking into how economies work in the game. Knowing which ones produce different kinds of commodities can be advantageous. For example, when colonization was new and everyone was struggling to find CMM composites, I was doing fine sourcing high pop systems with present surface refineries which produce CMM composites. If they were going under boom states, that signifies a lot of trade is happening there, so it's possible they're low on stock if players are locally sourcing as well. If high pop stations seem to be completely cleared out, I'd search for middle populations that may produce less but are less popular because most players are going to Inara or seeking out high populations. Of course, others do this too, so sometimes you just are stuck in a commodity drought. And many players were during that time, but that's the thing about living in a living game. The background simulation gives you a lot more game sense and opportunities for problem solving, which is honestly very rewarding. And I hope this video puts you in a place where you can now dive further into these mechanics if you'd like, because I think just getting started, knowing how to know, is an important step. Now you can look into stuff like influence pips and pluses and different kinds of states and stuff like that. And the title of this video is a bit of an exaggeration. There is a lot of documentation out there about system states, actions, how to get out of certain states, how to promote the likelihood of certain states, how power play can affect things, and how all of these intricacies come together, but I found myself totally confused by them because, again, I didn't even know how to learn yet, which is hopefully what this video did for you. I'm no BGS expert, so if any of you out there have been doing this for a long time and I've got some little details off, be sure to let me know and I'll probably drop an update in the pinned comment if that happens. With all that said, thank you for watching, and I'll see you around. Oh, actually, I really should have mentioned this earlier. The BGS updates once daily, so it's not technically a live sim. It does obviously listen to everything you do, but the effects of those things won't be seen for one real life day. It updates once daily. And then the weekly tick is a whole other thing. Some stuff changes there. Anyway, bye.